Hey everyone, welcome to Our Small Footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. I have had very few food videos at this grocery period, so generally speaking, I do my 8 weekly groceries, and then I do sort of 10-ish food prep videos from that supply run, like the things that we do with the food from that period. But it has been a really messy sort of an 8 weeks. I had health issues while I was down there and had some recovery time. We've all had colds. I started up the new shop. I've spent a lot of time on the products and the website and you know, getting all that established. So whilst I've been in the kitchen, I haven't released many of the actual videos of food. So I don't know which number this is. Normally I try and number them. I have no idea which one this is. But I think I have this one and 2 more that I need to get out in this sort of week because I go to the supply run again. So it's been 8 weeks since I last went, next Tuesday. So I've got to get these out and done before then, otherwise I miss releasing them. And I like to release them because the people who watch the supply runs really like to see what I do with the food that I get from there, and if I don't do these, then it doesn't show it, does it? So this is, as I said, I don't know what number this is, but it's food prep planning preservation type thing for the shop that I did, when was it, end of August, because the next one's end of October, so 7 weeks-ish ago. So, and what I'm trying to do for this week too is after the hamper and in the last week of the 8 week period, I try and do a what we eat in a week. So I've been trying to make sure that I record our lunches and dinners for that week. Now Darryl and I are looking at going ketovore from this next supply run period, but the kids will still eat the same way, so I'm still going to be doing all the baking and everything that I normally do for the kids. We're just going to be eating it differently, so it's a bit of planning going on with that, in the fact of things, just simple things like expanding on meals for them and not for us. Like if I do hamburgers, then Darryl and I can have hamburgers without the buns, but I'll bake the buns for the kids to have and that sort of thing. So I'm still just planning that, and quantities required, and obviously if we're not eating hamburgers with buns, we'll eat a few more meat patties than if we were eating it with buns and things like that. So I'm still working on that. So next month's going to be a little bit haphazard as well, lead up to Christmas too, though we do have one more shop just before Christmas as well. So anyway, we've got a bunch of stuff going on. I probably will try and do Vlogmas again this year with lots of sort of lifestyle type shorter vlogs, because I'm going to have all the stuff for the shop that I'm doing. We're getting the pool set up, the gardens, hopefully, you know, we'll just see how it goes. But for the moment, I'm squirreling before I've even started the video. We're going to do a food prep planning and preservation for this 2-monthly grocery period. So enjoy. I've been really mastering the baguette recipe lately, working on getting the timing down pat, the shaping consistent, and figuring out which scoring that I prefer once it's baked and things like that. The process is pretty clean now, and I can make a batch of 12 of these baguettes in about 1.5 hours of morning, which is great because it's quite a few meals of bread for us. It'll be even more once Darryl and I are doing ketovore next month too, because we won't be eating the bread, only the kids will. But that will just mean that I can freeze more of it, like with the way that I used to do it with slicing it, garlic butter, wrapping it in foil and freezing it, and then I could pull it out to cook as a side for a meal for the kids later on. So it'll go further because Darryl and I aren't going to be eating it as well. So that having the ability to just get that all done, especially when it's nice and warm, it's really quick too. I will eventually try it with sourdough as well, but our nights are still getting down to under 10 most nights still at the moment, so the starter just doesn't, it's still sluggish. I just cannot keep it consistent. So once it warms up a little bit more, then I'll be able to do overnight proofs and things like that, so I will do this for those. I did get the recipe for this up on the website too, so I'll make sure that the link is in the description, as well as a link to the shop and all that sort of stuff as well. But I did get the recipe for these baguettes up because I am really happy with how they're working now. I get consistent results every time, and they're just a really nice sort of a bread product. One of our favourite breakfasts when we have an abundance of eggs is Dutch baby pancakes. I use my cast iron pans, put a good dollop of fat in them. This time I used ghee, which is my preference, but it really depends on what I have on hand. I then put the pans in the oven to get really hot and the fat to get nice and bubbly. I mix up the batter in my Thermomix. Lots of lovely air in the batter, really nice and smooth. 18 eggs, 600 grams of milk. I use coconut cream and a bit of water, and 350 grams of plain flour or all-purpose flour. Mixed on 5 for about 30 seconds, scraped down and mixed again. And then I pull the hot pans out of the oven and pour the batter into them, making sure that the batter is hitting the puddle of fat to help it to crisp up and not stick to the sides of the pan. Then it goes into the oven for about 35 minutes until the center is firm. I must have forgotten to film it coming out of the oven, or I got someone else to get it out, I'm not sure. But we serve it, and generally speaking, we serve it with a drizzle of maple syrup and then some of the canned cinnamon apples from the shelves. Sometimes some bacon as well is really nice. My version of a Dutch baby is very dense. It's like a baked custard, super high protein, and everyone really likes it. The recipe, I'm pretty sure, is on the website as well for these ones, so again, I'll try and put a link. The whole point of having the recipes on the website and then having the videos with this in it is that I can link them both ways, so that when I do this sort of a short showing of how the recipe is done, but not necessarily, in depth, I can then direct to the recipe as well so that you can get the other details. So that's the plan anyway. I also baked some more of the banana muffins that I baked the other day as well, with more of the overripe bananas, because we got those boxes of seconds bananas, so we had heaps of overripe bananas to use. We froze a whole lot. A lot will be used for ice cream, smoothies and things like that, but muffins are always nice, and banana bread's good too. So I'm really happy with this recipe now. I should put it up on the website as well. I'll plan on that. It has a nice flat top. It's not super sweet, but it's sweet enough to not need any icing, and it works in a tray bake cake as well as in the muffin tins. I've baked it in the cast iron baking trays as well, and it worked quite well. And honestly, for me, if I can bake something in a tray and slice it, I do prefer it than doing muffins and things like that. It's just less work. I needed to get some of the pork roast processed that I had bought, so I decided to have a roast for dinner, which is one of our favourite ways to eat it. I cut up the rind to go over potatoes first, and I need to do this in bulk at the beginning of the next shopping run as well. Potatoes do not last well here in the summer because we don't have a cold room or anything like that. I'm not storing them in the fridge because there's not enough room, but also potatoes in the fridge just aren't great. It's too cold for them. So what I need to do is cook them and then store them. So when I do them in these trays with the rind over the top of them, then I can freeze them whole, and then when we want to eat them, all I do is I throw them in a tray and I bake them for 20 minutes and they're just like fresh baked potatoes. It has worked wonderfully. So especially with Darryl and I not eating potatoes in the next run, it means if I do these in bulk and freeze them in Ziploc bags, then I can just pull them out and roast them to have as a side for whatever dinner we're having. So if I'm making chicken of some sort that Darryl and I are having and the kids are having it with mixed veg and potato and stuff, then that will make that easier. So I should do this in bulk at the beginning of the month to get that done. Then I did my usual with the roast. I'm heavily considering buying a new smoker on this run. Mum bought me a charcoal grill a couple of Christmases back, and whilst I love it, it's challenging. There's a lot of supervision required to maintain the heat, to get it to work appropriately, and to keep it going. And I haven't enjoyed using it as much as I used to enjoy the gas smoker that died on me. I'm tossing up between a pellet smoker and another gas one. Both have ongoing costs because of the fuel. If I had something that used timber, we have timber here, and we do have the wood stove that still isn't set up, but we probably won't do that until winter now. So I think the ease of a pellet smoker really appeals. I don't really want to rely on gas again, and the pellet smokes, I know I have to buy the pellets, but we can just have them stored and used appropriately and figure out how much I need for times of cooking and things like that. I haven't decided yet. It's an outlay that I'm not real sure I want to do, but at the same time, especially with the whole ketovore thing and eating a lot more meat, being able to throw a whole lot of stuff in the smoker like I used to when I had the gas smoker before it died would be really nice. Anyway, squirreling again. I coated the pork in Dijon mustard and then in my sweet and smoky rub. Now, thinking about our eating styles again after this trip, I can still do this but with no sugar in the rub, so that'll be good. So we'll probably adapt that a bit to suit and still smoke the pork like this. Darryl and I just love eating slices of this pork. It is so good. Once it's all coated, I put it in the oven with my Inkbird temperature probe in it. I have that linked somewhere too. I really like the Inkbird one. It's magnetic, it's Bluetooth, and it's wonderful. I do want the new one though. At the moment I have one of the ones that probe with a wire to the little unit, and they now sell ones that are wireless. I keep on eyeing that off. It's on my wish list for me I might buy it for myself for Christmas or something, but it's very expensive, so I haven't got there yet. Then we got the first 24 muffins onto cooling racks and refilled the muffin pans for another batch and got them in the oven as well. I always try and do sort of 48 muffins at a time because with 6 kids they go through them quick enough that you can do it that way. This is what the pork looks like when it comes out of the oven. It has a lovely dark crust on it and we cook it to rare, which is 64 Celsius internal. Being that pork is a red meat, you're allowed to eat it rare, and the texture is amazing that way. I used to cook my porks to a lot higher temperature, and I always found them tough. You always wanted to eat them with gravy and stuff because they just weren't great. If you only do it to the 64, I highly suggest trying it. If you only do it to the 64, it's melt in your mouth. It is a little pink in the middle, but that's allowed because it's classed as a red meat. But the texture of it is... it's just really soft and tender and really amazing, especially when it first comes out. But it means that, because a lot of problems with like roast pork when you cook it like this, the next day it's a little bit tough as well, and I would end up like slicing it up and putting it in fritters or fried rice or something like that, because it just wasn't as nice just sliced. But when you cook it like this, it's perfect sliced the next day cold as well. I sauteed up a large amount of broccoli in the cast iron pan because we had the whole box of, well, I think it was 2 boxes of clearance broccoli that we got this month. We had the roasted potatoes and slices of the pork for dinner. I probably did a little bit of gravy, can't say for sure because I don't have any photos of it served, but we just did a huge amount of broccoli, those roasted potatoes and that pork for dinner. The next day I got moving on more of the pork. We had the roast leftovers for lunch, so I didn't have to worry about cooking lunch. I cut up the pork roast into pieces that would fit into the grinder, keeping a good amount of fat on the roast along with taking some fat with the rinds. There would be enough in the mince for the sausages, but also a little bit of fat for that cooking of the potatoes as well. I filled more trays with the potatoes. As I said, these freeze really well and they reheat superbly in the oven. So a great way to use that pork rind to get them all cooked up, render the fat out, and then have them easy access from the freezer for later on in the month and not risk the potatoes going bad. So it's definitely going to be something that I do more regularly, especially in summer. In winter it's not such a big deal. The potatoes last the whole period pretty much, but in summer they go bad within a couple of weeks. Once the pork was all cut up, I started seasoning it. The first lot I used a bunch of my sweet and smoky pork rub, which is a blend of paprika, garlic, onion, brown sugar, pepper, salt, mustard powder, and then I added half a jar of caramelised onion jam and a good slug of Worcestershire sauce. I would have also added a bit more salt here probably too, because we're going to get the ratios for sausages to be appropriate. So there is, I've linked the spreadsheet before, but there is a ratio of the amount of salt and that you use per kilo of pork when you're doing your sausages, because things tend to get a little bit milder once they're turned into sausages, so you find you need a little bit more flavour than you would think you do. I've actually run out of my homemade Worcestershire sauce and badly need to make more. I base it on plums, so hopefully there will be some excess plums again available this year and I can make a big batch of it. It didn't last us the whole year. I wasn't sure how long it would last because I didn't think I'd used it as much, but the homemade Worcestershire sauce had such an amazing flavour that I could eat it just drizzled on steak. And I know that people eat the store-bought Worcestershire sauce like Lee and Perrins in that sort of way, but I never found it particularly pleasant. But the homemade stuff was amazing, so we used that a lot and we went through it fairly quickly. So I need to make another batch of that. I do have to buy malt vinegar when I'm making it though, which is something that I don't always have in the house. I massaged the marinade thoroughly through the pork. Second batch of pork I flavoured in an Asian vein. So garlic and ginger, some soy sauce, some black vinegar, some fish sauce, sesame oil, salt and pepper, and massaged that through as well. After that I just got into mincing it. I didn't film it all, but I ran all the flavours through the mincer separately. These shallow clear containers work really well for me in the fridge. They're great for pizza dough as well, and things like this, so I used them as well as bowls, whatever I had available. I mince the pork fairly a rough grind as it's a tender meat and the cut I'm using doesn't have much in the way of any sort of gristle or anything else. The bits that will be turned into sausage go back through the grinder as well, so that's fine because it's less rough cut in the sausage casings because it's going through a second time regardless. I used my Louvel mincer, which I always rave about every time I show it. It takes about a minute per kilo, it's got a low power draw, and has all the attachments and disc sizes that I need. They have great customer service as well. There's an affiliate link in the description for these guys. Highly recommend them. I was just super happy with it when I bought it after doing all the research, and I was so grateful that the one that I bought works really well for us. For dinner that night I decided to make an Asian style smash taco type thing. I was going to use wonton wrappers, but I didn't have any available. I thought I had some in the freezer, but I couldn't find them. So instead I used the small flour tortillas that I had bought from Costco. But first up, I cut all the kernels off all the corn cobs that we had left. So I think we bought 2 boxes of corn, and we ate a large amount just roasted in the husk. So they'd the husk on, I'd stick them straight in the oven, and they'd steam and roast in their husk in the oven, and it's delicious. It's one of my favourite ways to eat corn. Just put a little bit of butter and salt on it once it comes out, and just amazing. But the kids get a bit bored with it. I could probably eat it for every meal, but the kids get a little bit bored with it. So we still had a fair amount left. So what I did is I put a bowl upside down inside another bowl and just cut all the kernels off the corn that was left to get it processed and out of the fridge. Once all the kernels were off, I seasoned them, a bit of paprika, some salt, pepper, garlic, and a bit of oil. I think I put some lime juice in there too and mixed it through. I also shredded up some cabbage really nice and fine. Being that these were Asian style tacos, we're going with a sort of a, cabbage and corn and that sort of flavour rather than the standard lettuce and tomato, though I think these would be really nice with beef and lettuce and tomato and stuff as well. I blackened the corn off slightly in the cast iron to cook it a little bit and warm those spices up. Whatever we don't use, we'll vacuum seal up for the freezer for other meals. It's super tasty done like this. It's really nice to add it into ramen, or even just reheat it on a pan to have with, sometimes I've used it in rice paper rolls and things like that. The flavour and that is really nice, and it's got that burst of sweetness when you heat it back up again too. Then I started cooking off the tacos. So I used the Asian-inspired pork mince. I put a ball of mince on the tortilla and pressed it out really nice and flat all the way to the edges. Then I placed the tortilla mince side down on the hot plate and let that cook. Once it had some really good colour and appeared to be cooked through, I flipped it to warm the tortilla through on the other side and give it a little bit of crisp. Then I topped it with a bit of Kewpie-style mayo, some corn and the cabbage, folded it, and actually gave it to Darryl to try and kept on going. He said it was good, so we kept on going. As I was doing these, I remembered that Nyssa had sent me some taco holders. I had never seen these before. These are stainless steel taco holders, and they were perfect for this. I'd never had a reason to use them before. This was my reason, and it worked fantastically. I could fill each holder and then take it to the table, and the kids can serve themselves from them and return them, and I could fill them back up again. So I just kept on making them, sending them to the table until they said they had enough, and then we stopped making them, sort of thing. These were really nice. Everyone really enjoyed them. I think there's a lot of different flavour profiles that you could use with the same sort of principle. They were pretty easy to make. You could just make the mince up into crumbles and have it just like tacos, but the fact that the tortillas were slightly crispy and they were warmed through was really nice too. So the having them as made that way, really, it just leveled up the whole thing rather than just having wraps. And I suppose it made it feel more like a dinner meal than a lunch or a breakfast, because it was made into something like that rather than just having the mince cooked off and served so that you could fill them yourself. Something else I tried with this Asian-inspired flavoured pork mince was something called guokui. I have no idea how that's pronounced. It was Guokui. All I did was I googled around to see what else had Asian-style pork mince sort of things, and I came across these. It might have seen it on Instagram or something, I can't remember, but I then went googling to find all the different recipes for it, to see all the different ways that it's made, so that I could pick and choose what I wanted to do. It's sort of a flatbread, it's pan fried, and it's stuffed with flavoured pork is, the basis of it. So I made the dough up and then divided it into portions. The dough was pretty standard, every recipe I found, except it used hot water. So it mixes the hot or boiling water with the flour and then sprinkles the yeast over it and then kneads it. I don't know what difference that makes to anything, but I try and follow recipes the first time I make them, and then I adapt it from there. So I did it what it needed, let the dough rest. There were plenty of recipes. Most of them had a Szechuan I'm going to ruin that word too, aren't I? Base for the pork, but I used the pork I'd already seasoned in an Asian way, so it probably could have had the flavour boosted a little for this purpose, but it worked well regardless. It was just a little mild, and a bit like when you put pork into sausages and you need to bump that flavour up. I think that this could have done with a little bit of a boost of flavour as well. You roll out the dough into a rectangle really nice and thin, and by using a little bit of oil on your board you can sort of stretch it out and make it really nice and thin, a bit like when you're making a roti or a phyllo type pastry, a similar sort of a concept there. You sprinkle the meat over the top and then roll it up into a sausage or a cigar type shape, and then roll it again into a coil shape, flattening the coil so it looks sort of like a flat cinnamon scroll. Then add sesame seeds to the top. So it said to sprinkle sesame seeds. I actually dipped it because I really like sesame seeds and I really like them toasted, and this was going to be toasted, so I dipped a whole side into the sesame seeds because that's my preference. Then you heat up some oil in a pan and you fry it. So fry it for a few minutes per side till it's lovely and golden brown and crispy. Various recipes had various methods, but I decided to have the oven going, get them nice and crispy on the outside, and then bake them for about 15 to 20 minutes. That way everything was cooked well. I didn't have to stand over the stove cooking them all the way through. I had 3 pans going, but it was still fairly time consuming. So I sort of relate this a bit to, again, there was a few different methods on the internet, and this was one of them. And I sort of related a bit to how you can make English muffins, where you cook them off a little bit in the fry pan and then you bake the rest of them in the oven. Similar sort of a concept. So that's what I was sort of basing it around, and it seemed to work for me. So they bake in the oven for like 25 minutes. They stay nice and crispy, cook all the way through, warmed all the way through. Once cooked, we cut them into quarters, and they were delicious. They were really, really good. Definitely worth making again. A little bit of effort, but very much worth it. I think that too, that you could fry them off in the pan and then potentially freeze them and then throw them into the oven from frozen and cook them off for say 35 minutes maybe, and they would be perfect. So you could store them frozen and then just do that baking method at the end. So that's something I might look at doing, and then that way the kids can have them as meals as well when Darryl and I aren't eating this kind of thing too. We served them with some Japanese style mayo with a bit of sweet chili sauce drizzled over the top, and just dipped them in that way. We definitely overate these because they were really, really good. So the meat that was minced up for the sausages went into the fridge overnight just to flavour, and then we'll stick it in the sausages. That must be on the next video. So then we put it into the sausage casings after that. So we soak the skins and everything overnight as well. The mince is nice and fully flavoured for having sat in all those spices overnight. I tend to cook a little bit of it off to taste before I stuff the sausages, so it's probably on the next video, that whole process, and then we stuff them. So I'll show you that, hopefully. I assume it's on the next video. And then we made all the sausages to go into the freezer, and we've been eating through those as well, which is wonderful. We probably won't make sausages again late for this year because they're not so great to make in the hotter months because there's too much airtime and too many flies and things like that. So until we get the kitchen screened off, which is just, it's been delayed by numerous things and we haven't quite got there yet, but once that happens it'll make it easier. But for the moment it's a bit hot to be working on with that kind of thing, and the mincer overheats and things like that. The colder the meat, the colder the mincer, the better the quality of things. So we probably won't make sausages. We'll just mince it and use it as patties and things like that for over the summer. So that was everything for the next few days. There was another few days of food, and we got through the rest of that corn, and I think that was all the pork. I think that was the last of the pork that needed to work on. So yeah, so thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video. I have the next set of notes sorted, so I need to just do the voiceover for those, and then I've got that food video to go for you, and I've got to really get the planning done and sorted for you as well. So there's plenty that needs to be shared. It's just a matter of getting the time to share it. So thank you very much, and I will see you on the next video. Bye guys.